What will happen if it's taken away? I think that's a question for each of the countries to answer. Not as a catastrophe, but as an opportunity to.
Can you describe this feeling? And if the aids are not coming tomorrow? Hi everyone, it's another episode for Pivot Point podcast. I have an interesting guest with us today, Elizabeth. Elizabeth and I, we go a long way, actually back to high school days. And I'm very glad she could make it for the show today. She flew all the way to Nigeria. So in advance, I'm saying thank you to her. Elizabeth has a good experience working for government agencies. She used to work actually for USAID, doing several projects in different countries for them across Africa, East, Central, and West Africa. And there are emerging trends when it comes to what is happening with AIDS in Africa. And today we're going to explore together with her what's happening with that, and what are the latest developments in America regarding AIDS in Africa, and how that can influence what will happen in Africa in the future. Welcome, Elizabeth, to the show.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
You want to say something about you?
Well, you gave a great introduction. I was actually listening. I'm like, oh wow, that's a lot. But yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. It's like you said, we go way back, and it's actually really good to reconnect after all this time and then have a reflective conversation around what has happened over the last couple of decades.
Good. Thank you again for coming. Let's hit the road immediately. What's happening in AIDS in Africa, and what's happening if all of these aids are taken away? For instance, I'll give you a quick overview, because almost $13 billion is what America is investing in sub-Saharan Africa. Guess who is on top of the list of benefactors? Nigeria. Another 250 million from United Nations, and Bill Gates is giving more than 200 million currently every year. If all of this is taken away, what's going to happen?
I think altogether, and when we say aid, we're just talking in general in terms of like foreign assistance and in every format that it comes in. What will happen if it's taken away? I think that's a question for each of the countries to answer. All of the assistance that is given, as long as it's coming from an outside hand, can always be taken away at any point. And I think what's important at this particular juncture is for each of the countries to see this as not as a catastrophe, but as an opportunity to pivot.
Exactly.
Like as an opportunity to look for what we can do differently, what we can do more efficiently, what we can do with the resources that we do have. And it's a very jolting reminder that anything that is given can be taken away.
Interesting.
Exactly.
But most of us don't know how this works. That's the first thing, actually, because we see big numbers, and then sometimes we see things on the street, or we see somebody knocking on the door and say free polio vaccination. How does it come from $13 billion to the free health worker knocking on the door for free polio? Can you take us through this journey?
I think part of it is also what you've described is something that is not just foreign or probably misunderstood by people in Nigeria. Possibly is also very likely misunderstood by people in the United States.
Possibly,
the way my previous organization, USAID, used to run, we did not necessarily do any kind of sensitization activities within the country. I don't think we were even allowed to. But the funding for all of the assistance that is given overseas through the government of the United States comes through our Congress, comes through the United States Congress. So what is the version of Parliament, or what is the version of, House of Reps, exactly in Nigeria. And so those assistance dollars are then quantified based on what the interest of the country that is the giver is, and oftentimes determines how it is spent as well. Congress determines how it's spent.
How it is spent.
Yes. So like what proportion of it is going to be spent on maternal and child health, what proportion is going to be spent on malaria, what proportion is spent on HIV, AIDS,
or polio,
or things like that. Exactly. And that's for the government side of it. And I don't want us to just think about this as just assistance coming in only from the government, because like you mentioned, there are also philanthropic organizations, there are individuals, philanthropic individuals, foundations, there is United Nations, and they all get their funding through different ways. What I'm most familiar with is the ones that I worked with most closely, either as through an international organization or the international non-governmental organization, or through a U.S. government agency itself. But a lot of it goes through congressional notifications, congressional approvals, and then it gets sent out through a number of systems to the individual countries. And then in those countries, it is often then divvied out to different organizations. And some of them might be local organizations, so Nigerian organizations, and some could be international ones, like American ones or others from other countries. Some are also, in some countries, USAID used to do a lot of government-to-government assistance as well.
Direct government-to-government.
Direct government-to-government assistance for programs, and it would be specifically focused around technical areas of interest to both countries, and it could be on capacity development at the national level or all the way down to supportive supervision, including the health worker you described who's knocking on doors.
Interesting. I never thought of it like that. That's very interesting, and I'm thinking as you speak, like trained engineer, at least by not by work but by education, and I think if you send electricity through the cable, it's not the same quantity that you get at the end.
That's true.
And I'm thinking, what is the efficacy in this whole process? Because I know when people are involved, things can get a little bit confusing.
Well, I don't think it's confusing. It was very well documented. Like the funding, and I have worked as a recipient. I worked as a chief of party of an international non-governmental organization before that was getting funding from the United States government, and we also got our own individual donor sponsorship, and the financial systems are actually quite solid. In terms of the rigor that goes into auditing, in terms of the rigor that goes into what funding goes where. What isn't and I think where people get disappointed is the proportion that is used for overhead, for instance, that is possibly the proportion that is actually going to the actual work on the ground in terms of the community health worker, etc., that is actually delivering the services, and the proportion that goes to overhead. And it gets distorted. It gets sometimes when you look at the numbers, it's kind of like it's surprising what proportion stays as overhead. But having been someone who was on the management side of things with an international organization, it takes a lot to get that machinery for that health worker to be in a community. In Lagos might be easy for them to get to, but imagine they're going to a place in Offa, they're going somewhere in Inewi or somewhere up north in Sokoto. It takes a lot to make sure that person is well equipped, that person is safe, that person has the right kind of vaccination, even the carriage for the vaccination, the vessel itself that carries it. Their transportation there and back, that they have water, that they have food, just the basic things. And a lot of that is not counted in the overhead of the machinery that supports that person on the back end is often covered in a different kind of pocket. So when you look at the funding, it looks like, well, direct implementation was only this amount. But a lot of that
support for that direct
the support is actually
give us rough ideas. Out of every dollar spent, how many cents gets to that lady that knocks on my door?
It's not as easy as that to describe, because what I just described is going to be different for if the money was in Sokoto, if you're working in Bangladesh, Kenya, if I'm working in Bangladesh, if I'm working very different numbers in that way. But what I would say is that regardless of the justification that I just gave to the back end of it and why management, and oversight of some of these projects might cost as much as it does, there is always efficiencies that could be gained across the systems, across the board.
Like any other system.
There are always efficiencies that could be gained, and being clear-eyed about that is important as well.
Of course. And that's very interesting. I'll go back to my first question when I was asking if this is taken away from African countries. Do you believe we can live without this aid?
Oh, of course we can. Of course we can. And I say we now being like a Nigerian American very proudly so that this is my origin, right? Like, I mean, we both know how we grew up in Lagos. We did not grow up with privilege. And here we are now. Of course we can.
Absolutely.
And we're resilient people. We are highly resourced. And if anything, I think what this might give the different countries is an opportunity to reassess where their priorities are and how they fund their priorities. Because for a long time, in some of those countries where large health programs have existed, there has been sort of like an offsetting of reality of what the true nature or the cost of delivering services is, because it's been so highly subsidized by external factors. So now we get an opportunity to actually do it ourselves. When the first announcement came with the stop work order of the U.S. government or USAID's work, at the time I was in Ghana. One of the first things that the minister of actually the president did at the time was to instruct the Minister of Finance to find opportunities for the shortfall, like look for funding to cover up the shortfall. And at the time, the funding for health in Ghana from USAID was about 77 million a year. I want to make an educated estimate that if Ghana were to do some of the work that USAID was doing by themselves, it will not cost them 77 million.
Wow.
Because they would, first of all, not have some of the overhead that I talked about.
The back office,
They will not have some of that. They would probably find cheaper ways to do the things that in the systems that they know. There might be some efficiencies that might be lost in terms of like the effectiveness of some of the programs, synergies, and but transition always takes time. And it might take them a while to actually get things to the point where the quality is what it used to be when you had those other systems and funding coming from external donors. But in terms of the possibility, can we, which is your question, can we survive without it? Absolutely. And we should never feel like we're in a position where we cannot, where we put ourselves in a situation where we feel like we're in a situation where we need that external support to
get by,
to thrive. But then there's the other part of it. There's a part of it of like, if you are in, and that's probably a different kind of philosophical conversation, if you're in a position of more fortune, do we have a responsibility? Do we have maybe not even a responsibility? Should we be concerned? Do we have some level of value or something that triggers us to do more for those who may have less? But that's a different conversation. And that I think that is a conversation that we can individually respond to even in our own daily lives. But also as governments and institutions and people in very high positions of privilege could always ask that question of themselves, I think.
Interesting. I like the way you put it. Permit me to get a little bit personal.
Sure.
Because I didn't get a chance, so far in my career to work in this type of place. And I feel there's something in it more than getting your daily or monthly income.
A paycheck.
A paycheck. There's an element in it that when you go on the street and you see a malnourished child or a woman that could have died from childbirth. Can you describe this feeling? Knowing that you are part of this big engine that is driving this type of impact in society. Absolutely.
I think so I started this, and you know this because we were in secondary school together. I started doing some of this volunteer. It was like volunteer work at the time. And I was 13 actually when I started volunteering, and I was I volunteered and I got trained as a peer health educator, and I worked in adolescent health, and I kept doing it when I finished secondary school and then continued on. There is It's more than a paycheck for most of the people that I have worked with across.
Yeah.
And I've worked across 8 different countries, lived and worked in 8 different countries with people who are from those countries, people who have come from other places, and we all kind of just work together. One thing that does permeate across the board is that there is a passion for humanity. Obviously. That people come with.
Yeah.
And for almost everybody, without exception, it is more than a paycheck. There is something that draws you to this line of work to begin with, and then there's something that keeps you going, because it can get very frustrating, and progress can be slow and sometimes even not linear. Yeah. And you sort of have to have something that keeps you motivated and keeps you moving on. My personal story, one of the reasons I do what I do is that so my mother was the sole surviving child of 13 siblings. Ooh. And all of her other siblings passed away. Most of them passed away before the age of 5. Ooh. So when she started having her kids, there was nothing you could tell my mom about family planning. It didn't matter what you said about, hey, space your children. It would be better for your health. Have less kids. It would be better for your livelihood or for theirs and your health.
Experience told us something else.
Have less kids. You could feed them more, malnourish them. My mom was just like, yeah, wait, let my children live first.
Survive first.
When they survive, we will figure out the rest. And until her kids started growing to be over the age of 5, and she could see kids live and not pass on. Only after I think her 6th child did my mom start thinking about family planning options, irrespective of the effects to her own health.
Oh wow!
Exactly. So. For me, when I go into a health facility, or I see someone, or I see whether it's a malnourished child, or whatever programs we're thinking of, whatever things that I was working on the back end, it wasn't just the numbers, it wasn't just the words on paper. The strategic plans meant more. It was every individual. How can we improve the experience of that client?
Wow.
So they make a decision that is not born out of fear, but out of their values and something that is in line with what would be progressive for themselves and their livelihoods. Yeah. And not out of the fear of would my child survive, or would I die in childbirth, or would my child, die from malnutrition or HIV, etc. So that sort of keeps me going, and that's part of why I did what I did for such a long time.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think for most of the people who do this line of work, when we interview ourselves or we get the opportunity to get together, there's always something. There's always a trigger that drove them into the line of work.
I bet it kept you going, to be honest, because you speak with some kind of connection, like this is what I'm supposed to be doing, or I did, And for me, it's living in 8 different countries, having a family of your own.
Yeah.
Were there a moment when you had, should I really be doing this? Or it was all rosy as you went?
I'm having those moments now. I'm having those moments now. It's been an interesting it was an interesting last, half year plus 9-8 months. So I'm having those moments now, but ultimately what I have done, the little that I have been able to do with the massive amount of support from an incredible teams in all of the countries that I've worked with, has been a privilege beyond everything else. It has been a privilege. It's been whether I was volunteering as youth, educator in a secondary school in Lagos, or it is, working in, with a massive team in Bangladesh, or is working with volunteers in Guyana. Wow. It's always been a privilege because you get so much inspiration from the people you work with. You get so much inspiration and contentment from seeing the result of some of the work that you put in, and just knowing that someone else's opportunities have been brightened and increased because of something that you may have contributed to is such a privilege, I think.
I believe
so. Yeah, there is there is not been a moment that has made me think hard enough for me to think, oh, maybe I shouldn't be doing this.
Okay, so you paid prices, but they were worth it.
I don't, I don't want to sound like a martyr. It
Yeah.
wasn't this, I was getting paid for what I was doing. Always when I was a volunteer at the very beginning, and even then I enjoyed what I was doing because I was getting so many skills. So even in terms of, even if I wasn't getting monetary value at the time, I was getting a lot of value in terms of experience and exposure, and just like I would go into meetings and I'll go like, wow, I can't believe they let me in here. And they're actually letting me speak. So there's been, it hasn't been, I wouldn't say I paid a price, and I don't want to sound like I was a martyr in any way. It was a career. I have benefited heavily from that career, and I have been able to contribute to something much bigger than me. And so it's all been worth it, and I have also benefited from the process.
Good. I'm glad, and I'm very happy for you for doing something you're totally passionate about. And let's step away from the personal bit. I'll come back there. I'll step away there a little bit, and let's look at the bigger picture. There are some people that believe that this opportunity that are given to, let's say, helpless kids or women that don't have the required support should be taken away. And I'm talking about people at the other end of the spectrum.
Yeah.
What is your take about this direction, about why they are doing this, and the manner with which they are doing this?
Yeah.
I don't want to call names yet, but I think you know where I'm going to.
So I'm very proud to be American. I'm very proud of that opportunity to have been. It's an adopted country for me. I was born in Nigeria. I'm a Nigerian American, so I have the opportunity to have both citizenships. I am really proud of the heart of a typical American. A typical American, for the most part, is actually quite generous.
Yes.
And they do tend to want to see
big hats.
They want to see, optimism and
progress.
Hope and being a good neighbor. Some of those, those kind of values that we sort of have or we should have as human beings. I think there might be a bit of a misunderstanding at certain corners as to what this kind of assistance means and the value that can be derived both from the people that are participants in those other countries and also from the countries that are actually also doling it out. And I think there is a bit of a disjointed understanding of what it might mean.
Misunderstanding.
Or honestly, maybe it's just a mismatch of values. Maybe at this point it's just something that they don't necessarily value at this point, and so they want to focus on some other things. I think now on the Nigerian side, it is an opportunity for, additional ownership of the process, additional
how we do this.
Exactly, and additional leadership, and also being able to be more strategic about how we partner, with whom we partner, and to what kind of leverage we give different partners at different times. Because you don't want to be in a position where your system is crippled because an external factor.
It's not bringing something to the table.
It's not bringing something that is completely completely based on possibly their benevolence. You don't want to ever be in that kind of situation. On the other hand, as an American, I have seen the value of being able to see slogans that say "from the American people" across the world, or going into programs that are funded in very remote parts in DRC, and seeing that this group that is working to vaccinate children in that area is doing it as a result of funding from the United States government, and people seeing that as being, for some people, that's probably going to be the only interaction they will have with the United States.
True.
They may never get the
Never
opportunity
touch
to
the
go
ground,
there.
yeah.
They may never get the opportunity to even meet with an
Yeah,
American.
American, yeah.
But they may remember that,
I
their
got a
child
bottle of water,
their child got the
first
vaccination,
aid
or
kit,
their kids were able
bag
to
of
get
rice.
reading materials, or their
Yeah.
teachers were, or someone in their household got some kind of opportunity for a business that they could upskill or increase from being a small to a medium scale enterprise.
Yeah.
And those things resonate. I remember the opportunities I got when I was a teenager, and the organizations that brought those opportunities to me. I still remember them, whether they know it or not, and the kind of accolade I give to them in my mind, they may never know.
Yeah.
But it does engender a certain level of affinity
Yes.
to that group, and that is unquantifiable.
Of course.
And when you lose that, it's really hard to rebuild it.
Yeah.
And so I think there is some level of misunderstanding of the true value of this,
created,
beyond the dollar value, the true value of what's.
Beyond the economics.
And there is a lot of economics to it, by the way.
I
There's a
bet.
lot of economics to it in terms of market access
Yeah.
and access in
Yeah.
general
Yeah.
that it gets. But beyond the dollar value that you can quantify in the immediate, I think people may be a bit short-sighted about the longer-term ramifications and the longer-term dollar value of the benefits to the United States.
I bet. Thank you for sharing that. But one guy who has no doubt about the impact and looking beyond the dollar value and understands what value this brings is Bill Gates. He's been very vocal about this and even pledging to double or quadruple its annual contribution towards
That
this.
is right.
Do you think more rich people should do this?
Are you talking about yourself, Sam? When you say rich people, I think overall, I mean, again, I'm in this line of work, so
Yeah.
I've done this work for a long time. So maybe my nuance is also clouded. My perspective is clouded by that as well. But I think in general, everybody. I don't think it's a rich person per se responsibility only. I think everyone in almost any position could probably find someone around them that they could do a little bit more for. And just a little longer, a little bit more,
But
a
could they
little
be
more
more
time.
vocal, challenging the government, going on the stage, and even saying, "I will increase," and I challenge the rest of the rich people to increase?
How people react to this is a personal choice.
Absolutely.
I do feel like his path, Bill Gates' path, has been instrumental, I think, in galvanizing the voices of many,
Yes.
and also speaking for many who may not be able to speak at that point. And I think it's incredibly important that he has been able to use his position to do that.
Yeah.
How others react, and I'm sure there are many others who are reacting in different ways. Some might be more quiet than it. They may not do it as openly.
True.
Is a personal decision.
Yes.
But I think it is an opportunity for us to just be more introspective and look around and see what else we could do.
Else we can do.
I don't think that foundations should just automatically replace what, the US government may be withdrawing from.
Yeah.
And again, USAID that I used to work with it was ended, but then some of the programs were going to be folded into the State Department. So some of them will probably continue. I don't know in what form they might continue in, but that's for government employees to determine, and the political leadership. But I think ultimately foundations and philanthropic organizations and wealthy people, like you mentioned, don't necessarily have to replace everything that others may be withdrawing from. There are opportunities for them to create efficiencies as well, just like the governments that I said earlier could look into, with the understanding that being able to move people from one stage of their life to another, that we all at some point or the other need some
Needed,
kind of assistance.
Absolutely.
Whether it's a person who mentors you,
Yes.
it's a coach who charges you on,
Yes.
it is a
Cheerleader.
government who gives you opportunities
Free
to
education,
study for
free meal.
there is something that everyone at certain points in their life has benefited from, a system, an individual, an external being that supported them through that. And I think just recognizing that this isn't charity, this really is, in many ways, is self-preservation.
Yes.
If Nigeria is safer, America becomes safer.
Yeah.
If Nigeria has less outbreaks of
there are always
epidemics,
if
Nigeria
benefits.
has less outbreak of epidemics,
there are less people wanting to
there are
live.
daily flights between Lagos
Yes.
and the United
different
States.
points of America.
So there is a lot of self-preservation from that as well.
Yes.
Like you said as well, the economic portion of it. If people are more economically stable in their countries, then they are probably less likely to want to leave those countries.
Yes.
And they may be even happier being home and being able to contribute to the development of their homes.
True.
So and then American companies, etc., can also have larger markets that have more economic power to also purchase from those companies.
True.
And so they're also self-interested reasons that this benefits both sides, both ways. And yes, and I think we could all of us use our voices and our opportunities in ways that benefits others in whatever way we can.
Interesting. I like how you put it. Very clear. Let's put the cat on the table. Everybody gets something to take home. The immediate benefit for the recipient, and there are also long-term benefit for the donors. But one thing comes clearly: even if the strong people like Bill Gates donate, they still don't have the infrastructure.
Yeah,
they cannot, build this level of structure that can take a vaccine to Umuahia or to Kano today. It will take still decades, even if they can match the resources of the country. Outside of funding and in the absence of USAID in the future, how can this level of infrastructure be built by individuals?
So I don't know that. First of all, I don't think that was ever the role of USAID to build that level of infrastructure. And not just USAID in this perspective. I don't think even any donor agency, international organization should be responsible for that.
Yeah.
I think that level of infrastructure needs to come from within. The countries that we work in, or that I used to work in, and individual countries like a country like Nigeria should be able to use its vast wealth, human and material capital, to look for infrastructure that models for to build infrastructure that can get those vaccines to the places that it needs to go to. And there are innovations that we can use. This is where we can get smarter with technology as well. Exactly. What are young people doing? What is it that they are building? What new kinds of supply chain structures are they coming up with? And how can we leverage those and use as many kind of tools, recognizing that not everything will succeed.
Yes, true.
But what kind of things can we invest in and see how we can build on those to then expand this infrastructure, so that whoever else is coming in, whether it's Bill Gates or is the Dangotes of the world, or is it, all of the wealthy people within the country themselves who then support that system are able to then contribute towards it. And I also want us to also consider this, that the people who we're supporting, and it's, whichever organization it is, whichever entity externally that is supporting the community, also needs to look at the resources that those communities have. People not having money doesn't mean they are materially poor.
True.
True. I did not grow up with wealth, but I don't think when I was growing up now I think about it, I was very poor. But when I was growing up, I don't think that I considered myself as poor, because I had a number of things that I felt like I contributed all the time.
Yeah.
Like if people want to, so I think in the models that are going to be employed to fill the gaps, we should look at the opportunities that exist within those communities and really look at each other as partners. We may not be materially equal partners, but ideas wise, efforts, resources in terms of the human capital that those communities have, let's bring that to the table and also use that in a way that makes the most sense.
Absolutely.
I think one of the best examples of this is looking at the models, and honestly, of all the countries that I have lived in, I think probably Bangladesh is probably the most hopeful developing country that I lived in, and their model of, I was working with an international non-governmental organization at the time, and we were partnering with a number of other local non-governmental organizations at the time, and I was fascinated. I was blown away at the level of sustainability that these organizations had built into their model. I will go to a site to go visit. It was a nutrition program, and I would go to the site to go visit the communities that we were working in, and we would have lunch. And the restaurant we had gone to will be run by one of our local partners. And it was a business that they ran. And the place that we stayed will be a guest house that they also ran. And then in the evening, they'll say, come check out our gift store that the ladies who were working in with this also materials that they had developed themselves, or they had built themselves, or they had designed themselves, and they were selling. And it was a model that sort of sustained itself. We had a number of NGOs that would have fish ponds and farms and businesses.
And they fed into each other.
And they fed into the NGO. So the NGO itself had businesses that it ran and was not completely dependent on just the donors.
So they created an ecosystem.
They had their own
to continue to
exactly. One of the biggest NGOs in the world, BRAC, is from Bangladesh, and it has this BRAC had the biggest school of public health in Bangladesh. It had a university, it had hospital, it had businesses, and it was a non-governmental organization. I guess it had for-profit arms. I don't know the internal intricacies of its work, but it was a model that I saw permeate so many different organizations there. And they were by far, I was working with an international governmental organization at the time. It was an American organization, or is an American organization, but most of the local partners we were working with were more self-sustaining than we were. If we stopped getting donor support or sponsorships from, we as the international organization may have crashed, but the local organizations we were working with, they will probably continue.
And this is what you hope for Africans as well.
I would
be at this level where they can self-sustain, they can create an ecosystem that can keep them running, and even if they make a bit of profit, it's still okay.
It is 100% okay. In fact, I encourage it.
To make money, exactly.
I encourage it.
And they can give back some to the community, and they can make things work. Because at the end of the day, you said something that I consider very intriguing, that true also, that money is the last signal of wealth. Like, we didn't grow up with much reality, but we're not poor. And I had the same feeling. Like, I didn't feel I was poor. I just felt that maybe I deserve another shoe, but I don't have.
Yes, that's right.
Maybe I could do with another pair of shirt. But
yes, that's right.
But I didn't think I was cold or I was naked.
Yeah, that's right.
But then we didn't have the cash, the money, which is one of the easiest signal of wealth. But we had other things.
That's right.
And if I look at the case with the Bangladesh NGO as an example, they were more resourceful. And if the aids are not coming tomorrow, they wouldn't be bothered.
They would survive a lot faster. They would rebound a lot faster than a lot of other organizations would. Mohammed Yunus, who is one of their biggest innovators in Bangladesh at the time, ran Grameen Bank, which he ran, and he essentially ran it as a social capital. for poor people and started with like people who had resource, who are cash poor.
Okay, cash poor.
Exactly. And used human capital as the basis by which we will then, build wealth.
Yes.
And it's probably, my mother did a version of this when I was younger, where everyone contributes money, and then every
chips in
month
something,
someone takes
takes
it,
in,
exactly.
trip.
But they added certain kind of social indicators into it as
top,
well, and said for you to also get the money, your children had to go to a certain amount of, had to attend school a certain amount of times a month. You also had to learn some basic numeracy and literacy.
So they're basically encouraging some behavior.
Exactly. And also your ability to also manage that capital becomes stronger, because you're also getting the skills you need to manage it and also to grow that wealth.
Wow.
So you can continue to fund into
it.
this revolving capital.
Wow.
And so being aware of the different models and being aware of the opportunities that exist, even within communities that may seem, cash poor, is really important for anyone who wants to then do some form of sustainable development and build some kind of sustainable infrastructure that will support any kind of work that the donors might be pulling away from.
Yeah, interesting. And I fully agree with what you're saying. We need to look more inside, be more introspective, find the resources, bring them out. It's not always about the money. The ideas, the connections, the synergies we can create between joint businesses are also very important. Thank you for sharing that. I'll go back to the personal questions.
Sure. Why not?
Looking at yourself, the girl in the high school,
yes.
I mean, I knew you. You were not scared. And I'm not surprised how much you've come all the way. You knew what you wanted. Maybe, I've even heard colleagues saying that she's too arrogant sometimes, or she's too vocal, and all of that. But if you look at yourself now, what advice will you have given yourself? The smart kid in high school that was bold, that was audacious, I would even say, that was brilliant, that was not scared, to share a point of view, even ahead of everybody else. And what advice will you give yourself?
All of these things I accept, indeed. I was all of those.
They were all complimentary.
The arrogance part, well, okay. I can see how it could be misconstrued as that, but that's okay. That's okay. I was all of those things. I agree. Before I left USAID, my tagline on my emails was think creatively and operate on the forward edge of audacity.
Think creatively
and operate on the forward edge of audacity.
Audacity of hope. Barack Obama.
Yeah, so I took those actually from two different phrases that I got from a previous from a past administrator of USAID.
Yeah.
And I think over time I put it there, not so much a message to others, but it was so much a reminder for myself to always look for opportunities to think creatively and continue to be audacious, continue to try to do the uncommon even when it feels uncomfortable. And I think my advice to that young girl and to anyone else at that stage or now is just try it anyway. Try it anyway. Even if it scares you, even if others don't see it, even if others might even discourage you from it, try it anyway, especially for young girls. In growing up in this environment, I got all sort of comments, I would say. Anyway, no compliments. Got all sort of comments when I was growing up. It was, I got all sorts of nicknames. It followed me through university, and it was important for who I was as an individual that I remained true to that part of myself. And I'm grateful that I was able to hold on to that. But I also am aware that there are many other people who may not have been able to do that. And the wealth of that, like what have we lost in that, in beating out that boldness and the creativity and just the outspokenness, the ideas that could have come? What have we lost as a result of just trying to get people to be timid all the time and just like conform so much about conformity. So I would tell that person to try it anyway, especially as a young girl. It's really important to just be bold, keep going. If you don't succeed, at least you tried and you learned something from the process. If you do succeed, gosh, how much you could share about that and what you could tell yourself about what you're able to do in the future. Now, specifically to this line of work, I would say go with your heart for sure. Continue to lead with your heart, but also go with your head. Be practical. Be balanced about it. Like all the things I'm telling you now about looking for opportunities to keep yourself sustaining, to keep yourself not always in the position of being a recipient, to being in a role where you can dictate your own faith in terms of the development, agenda that you have and you want to push. I would say, so balance that. Go with your heart. Don't look away from hardship because you may feel it differently from what others. Yeah. And when you see people going through situations, don't look away, see it. Make sure you recognize it. Make sure you recognize the humanity in that individual as well. But also go with all of the faculties in your head and look for ways that are practical to solve the problem such that you are also sustaining yourself and you're not putting yourself in a position where you are then, dependent on others.
Absolutely, absolutely. So what you're saying is warm heart and cold. Go with a balanced approach.
Go with a balanced approach.
Thank you for saying that. And listen, the level of your leadership comes very obvious. And my next question is, growing up, did you feel the weight of a role model? Did you feel you were doing this not just for yourself, you were doing also for people that will read your story, people that will look at you and be inspired, people that will hear what you're saying today, for instance, that says, walk up and have the conversation, go and make the handshake, show up, get dressed, even if you don't have all the confidence, but try.
Yeah. So you're giving me all these accolades. I'll take it all. Role model. I did not feel the pressure because I wasn't seeing myself as that. Okay. I was just being me. And it just happened to be that me had the opportunities to be in those kind of positions. Yeah. But I didn't feel pressure. Okay. I also grew up in a family of so I'm the last of 7 children. Okay. And in my household there was almost nothing that I had done that someone else in my family hadn't done before. So, there was nothing special about me.
Just one of us.
Exactly. I remember going home one time and telling I think it was my dad at the time, I mentioned that, I got an award. And my brother just turned like, for what? Because it wasn't about congratulations. It was just like, what did they award you for? Oh. And then I said, okay. Then I started thinking, I guess I should tell them what I got the award for first. And then I told them the award. And they're like, okay, yeah, well done. But, I didn't go for my university graduation. I didn't go for my master's degree graduation. Because okay, dude, yes, everyone else has done it. So keep going. So I didn't feel the pressure, but I didn't feel the pressure as a role model, but I appreciated that I had role models ahead of me that I could look up to and just know that, whatever you're doing, there is more that can be done. And whatever you're doing, it has been done before. Yeah. So keep going. If you have the ability to do more, do more. Absolutely. And just keep going.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing all of that. It's been quite interesting having this chat with you, Elizabeth. Even though I knew you back then, I can say I'm learning even new things still about you. And that's just the kind of person you are. And I'm glad you take it all as a compliment from me. Thank you very much for coming on the show. I want to thank you, and I'm sure all our guests will say thank you to you for sharing freely and openly. And just before we round up, I will ask one big question. What's next?
What comes next? Yes, it's a good question. I'm really in a position that I wasn't planning. At the beginning of the year, my year did not begin with me thinking by September I'll be in this particular position. Wow. Yeah, this year. Wow. I had different different plans in mind.
Perspectives, yeah.
But I do think this is also the same kind of things that I'm saying to, about Nigeria, etc.
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah.
this is an opportunity as
Yeah.
well for me to think more broadly about what else could happen in my life. I've done development for, a couple of decades now. And there are opportunities that I may be able to continue in that line, and I hope to continue to pursue those.
Yeah.
But I'm also looking at other opportunities as well.
Okay.
And considering where else I might be able to support or use my skills, use the skills that it could be domestically or it could be internationally. But I'm taking it all in stride.
Basically, you're open.
I am open. I'm open. I'm taking it all in stride and trying to enjoy the moment as much as I can and use the opportunity to just take a breather and then prepare for the next phase. Prepare for the next phase.
Prepare for the new, and I'm sure you're going to find something because you are also very resourceful. You are never giving up. I mean, I think it's inborn.
I'll try it anyway.
Anyway, I'm going to show up anyway. I'm going to put some effort anyway. And as long as you keep trying, okay, maybe out of 10, one is going to come
exactly.
good. And I'm sure you're going to find the next big thing for you.
Yeah.
Thank you again, Elizabeth, for coming. It was
a pleasure. It's a pleasure. Yeah,
absolutely. And I hope we can bring you back at some other point.
It would be fun. This has been nice. It's very nice. Yes. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much.